Last week, the US government started distributing $600 stimulus checks to adults making less than $75,000 a year. And now, it looks like we might even see $2,000 stimulus checks shortly after those. But before you decide what to do with the stimulus money, you're going to want to watch this video in full. If you're fortunate enough to not need a stimulus check to get yourself out of debt and catch up on bills, you might be thinking about investing it in the stock market. But in this video, I'm going to tell you why you don't want to invest your stimulus check. I'm also going to tell you the best way to spend your stimulus check that is actually guaranteed to deliver either a 12 or 22% return by the end of 2021. Lastly, if you disagree with me and you really feel strongly about investing your stimulus check, I'll tell you what I think the best strategies are for investing right now. So if you want to turn that stimulus money into much, much more, don't go anywhere. I've been really excited about investing lately, and I'll admit, my first thought regarding the stimulus check news was how exciting it was going to be to dump all of it into stocks. But given the economic climate we're in, and the climate that experts are predicting in the near future, I think this is actually a pretty bad time to be putting money into the markets, especially for inexperienced investors. These reasons are firstly because the US market is terribly overvalued right now. Second, COVID isn't over, with many experts predicting a double-dip recession in the short-term future. And lastly, other experts are predicting what they're calling a lost decade in US markets. You don't have to look very far to realize that the US stock market is fairly overvalued as a whole. According to the latest S&P 500 data, the market is estimated to be overvalued by between 95 and 211%. This is calculated using metrics like PE ratio, which measures how much investors are paying for stocks in relation to how much money businesses are actually earning. A higher PE value means that stocks are considered more overvalued. Looking at current valuations, we've only seen higher numbers twice in the last 100 years, and that's during the dot-com bubble of 2000 and the financial crash of 2008. The next thing to consider is that we're not exactly out of the woods yet in terms of COVID and its economic challenges. Even though vaccines are rolling out, there are still months of hardships that businesses have to recover from. And if these businesses don't continue getting the help they need from the government, many experts are expecting what they call a double-dip recession. This is when the market would experience another decline before recovering completely from a previous one. In this case, the huge crash we saw back in March and the subsequent financial challenges. Now, some of these same predictions believe that a stimulus package could save us from this double-dip recession, but naturally, there's a lot of discussion on whether the latest stimulus package will actually be enough to do that. Last, we have to consider the fact that we might be seeing a lost decade of stock market returns. Since the US market has been so good for the last several years, people often forget that the stock market can actually have bad years, and consecutively. And this is something that has happened multiple times in the past, and sometimes for several years at a time. Experts like Ray Dalio, hedge fund manager and founder of Bridgewater Associates, and Tony James, executive vice chairman of the Blackstone Group, are expecting a full decade of low or even no growth at all. They're basing these predictions on the recent challenges that businesses have faced, such as the large debt they've had to accumulate to make it through the pandemic. Additionally, they explain that recent growth is thanks to our low interest rate environment, which is quickly going to evaporate as we start to recover economically. These things combined will make it challenging for businesses to grow in the short term. So with all these things considered, buying into the market now could be a bad move. With historically high prices and a bleak outlook, you could be looking at a lack of any meaningful returns or even a potential loss if you pick the wrong investment. But despite these warnings, I am always investing. And even though I'm not personally investing my stimulus check, I think you can still win as long as you approach the decision responsibly. But I'll share more on that later in the video. Because first, I want to talk about the best way to spend your stimulus check money. And I know this is kind of controversial, but I think the best way to spend your stimulus check is actually to spend it. Don't save it for later, but actually blow every single dollar of that stimulus check if you can. The key is you have to be very strategic on what you spend it on, and you have to have plans to generate some amount of self-employment income in 2021. And this is because if you spend money on certain self-employment related expenses, you'll be able to write off the entire value of your stimulus check when the 2021 tax season rolls around. By doing this, you can spend the $600 or potential $2,000 and get tangible value right now, but also reduce your taxable income by that same amount next tax season, guaranteeing yourself hundreds of dollars more. Essentially, we're going to be using our tax-free stimulus money to get additional tax benefits that will leave us with even more money in our pockets. But let's take a closer look at the specifics here to make sure you can actually pull this off. There are two key components to make sure you get the most out of this stimulus shopping spree. First, you'll have to be paying taxes on some amount of self-employment income in 2021, and ideally $600 or more. Second, you have to spend it on the right expenses. We'll dive into both. First, let's break down the exact value of a $600 and $2,000 tax deduction, because it will vary based on your income level and it may not be the best choice for everybody. $600 in qualified tax deductions means you'll be taxed on $600 fewer dollars. So you'll essentially save your income tax bracket percentage of that $600, which would otherwise be owed if you were being taxed on it. This also means you have to owe taxes on at least $600 of self-employed income, or you won't be able to claim these deductions in the first place. But if you are hitting these numbers, by spending your $600 check and claiming the full deduction, you can save $72 on taxes if you're in the 12% tax bracket. This would be for anyone making less than $40,000 a year. This number is $132 if you're in the 22% tax bracket, which is anyone making between $40,000 and $86,000 a year. If we see $2,000 stimulus checks and you claim the full $2,000 tax deduction, you'll save $240 in the 12% tax bracket and $440 in the 22% tax bracket. Since people making less than $75,000 aren't getting any stimulus checks, I don't think I need to take this any further. But as you can see, by claiming the right expenses, you can instantly pocket a sizable deduction for next year, thanks to money that you didn't even have to earn in the first place. And when it comes to expenses, there are a handful of things you can write off as someone who is self-employed. Some of the most well-known expenses include the home office deduction, internet and phone bills, and driving your vehicle. Of course, these are pretty regular expenses that you're likely going to pay anyway, so these aren't our areas of focus when it comes to spending your stimulus check money. Instead, we want to focus on some of the other options. These include education, office supplies, advertising costs, and startup costs. Now, the education requirements are a little complicated, so I'll link the IRS guidelines in the description if you want to dig deeper. Ultimately, you can only take advantage of this deduction if you're pursuing education to maintain or improve on the skills needed for your current work. You can't take advantage of this if you're already claiming deductions on education elsewhere, or if you're using this education to get a new job or acquire skills that you don't currently use to earn income. But if you do qualify for this deduction, you can deduct the full cost from your taxable income. So this stimulus money could be a great opportunity to hone the skills that you use on a daily basis, snag a few $100s in tax savings next year, and perhaps earn even more money this year with your new knowledge. Next on the list is office supplies. You can deduct most office supplies and equipment from your self-employment income, which again means you can deduct the full value of the stimulus check from your taxable income. As someone who plans on making self-employment income from YouTube in 2021, in addition to a few other sources, I'm considering purchasing something like a new camera or computer equipment to satisfy these expenses. However, I'm no tax expert, and I did read on NerdWallet that some types of equipment can't be deducted fully in the first year. Instead, you deduct its depreciation over multiple years. So this is something I'll be looking into a little further before purchasing new gear. You can also deduct advertising costs, which is great if you advertise your personal brand or services on platforms like Google Ads or Facebook Ads. You could use your stimulus money to market yourself in the beginning of 2021, earn some new clients who will pay you more money, and then still enjoy the same deduction from your taxable income at the end of the year. Lastly is startup costs, which is something you don't want to overlook if you're thinking about starting a business in 2021. For example, in 2020, I filed an LLC for my Amazon affiliate website. As a startup-related expense, the full cost of that LLC organization will be deductible from my income. And there are tons of other expenses that come along with starting a business. Whether you're creating a website, registering for professional licenses, or organizing an LLC like I did, generally all of these are fully deductible. So by spending your stimulus check on starting up a business, you can actually get paid to start your business this year, thanks to the tax deduction you'll earn along the way. So between these 4 different self-employment deductions, there are plenty of ways for you to spend an extra $600 or $2,000 this year that will benefit you twice. First, you'll get to spend the money on improving your skills, increasing your income, or growing your business. Then you'll get to deduct that spending from taxes and save additional money next year. You can also feel good about spending and actually putting your stimulus money into the economy, which is part of the intent of these things anyway. But I hear you, maybe you don't have self-employment income and you don't have any plans to earn any. If you still think investing your stimulus check is the best option for you, here are my ideas for doing so. As we covered earlier, the markets are overvalued with a pretty unattractive outlook in the short-term future. For these reasons, putting your entire stimulus check into the stock market right now may not be the most efficient option in the event that a market crash comes a few months later. So instead, it may be a better idea to dollar cost average into your investments over the next few months. This means breaking up your investment into smaller pieces, and maybe investing just a few $100s a month for the next several months instead of going all in at once. This way, if the market does crash, you'll still have a few $100s available to pick up more stocks at lower prices. Or even if it just slowly declines, you can bring your average cost down to something more reasonable than the premiums we're seeing right now. Regardless of what you invest in or when you invest into it, the best place to do it is arguably a Roth IRA. I've covered this account in depth in another video if you're interested. But the benefit of investing into your Roth IRA is that all of the returns your investments deliver will be completely tax-free. In contrast, if you invest in a standard account, you'll eventually owe taxes one way or another, which is just an inefficient way of doing things. Plus, the stimulus checks do not count towards your taxable income for the year. So by receiving these checks, you're already getting that $600 or $2,000 tax-free. Ordinarily, with Roth IRAs, you're contributing earned income and paying taxes on it before it goes into the account. By using your stimulus check, you're contributing tax-free dollars, and when you take it out in retirement, it will still be 100% tax-free. This is an incredibly unique opportunity to earn huge long-term returns without any tax obligations whatsoever. My last tip is to be smart when looking for your potential investments. Although the majority of the US market is overvalued, I'm a firm believer that there are always attractive investment options somewhere in the stock market. For example, a lot of stocks are still heavily damaged from the challenges of COVID. Sectors like hospitality, travel, and banks have still yet to recover completely from their drops in March. Alternatively, you may want to stick with stocks that are better protected in the event that we do find ourselves in a double-dip recession, such as those in the tech industry that continue to perform well throughout 2020. Lastly, you may want to look for international investment opportunities. This is something I've personally been focusing on lately, and I covered it in depth in my video on international stock allocation. In short, the stock markets outside of the US appear to have much better valuations than the US markets right now. This could suggest they're a better buying opportunity for the short term, and will eliminate some of the risks I talked about at the beginning of this video. But that's all I've got for you guys today. So tell me, what are you going to do with your stimulus check money? I think I'm going to put most of it towards some self-employment expenses, but I may also drop a few $100s or so into my Roth IRA, and specifically into some international stocks. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, happy investing or happy stimulus spending, and I'll see you in the next video.